This is one of those topics where I have to say a little bit ahead of time because it's controversial and I think it might be a good idea to not jump to any emotional conclusions until I have to finish what I'm saying. So, I recently came across this concept, right? It's pretty radical compared to the way things normally operate in society. And that's why I'm saying it's a little controversial because either you feel really strongly for it or against it. And I don't think this subject is necessarily that cut and dry. Maybe it is for some people, but I think it really depends on where you are in your life, right? Because if you had told me a few years ago, uh, yeah, this is a great concept, I would have probably not agreed with you. However, now, given where I am, in my life, I think it actually does have some benefit to it. So, the thing that I'm going to speak on is couples who choose to live apart together. And I had no idea that this was actually a thing. And I didn't even go out searching for the information. Somehow it just popped up on my feed, and I started to kind of go down that trail a little bit and like explore it for myself to see how I felt about it. And truth be told, like given where I am right now at this stage of my life, the thought of living apart from someone yet being together in a monogamous, committed relationship seems a lot more exciting than having to share a roof with someone. And there's a lot to say on this, but I'll try to keep it concise. First of all, I've already done the whole living together with your significant other thing. And sure, there was some benefit to it, but I have found that eventually somebody gets disadvantaged in that situation. And I don't want to argue with someone consistently about domestic chores. For example, I have a certain level of cleanliness that I like to maintain in my home, and whoever I live with is not going to be seeing things the same way as me. Let's put it that way. Or you, right? Because we're all different. So I don't want to be consistently telling someone, well, you forgot to do this, or why did you do that? Because it's draining, right? And it's going to break down that relationship over time. Resentment, bitterness, those types of things start to set in. And I find that the older we get, the more set we become in our ways. So maybe when I was in my 20s living with someone, I was more flexible because I didn't really know myself at that point. But 2 decades later, at 43, I don't know myself completely, but I know myself a whole lot more than I did back then. So I know that I want things to be a certain way. Plus, for instance, another thing is I don't like to clutter my space with a lot of stuff. If I end up with someone who is very sentimental and has to keep the smallest thing that they touch, and bring it back home and display it somewhere, and it's just constantly going to be bringing things and piling, my nervous system will be shot, right? I cannot, again, fight with someone over something like that because, hey, they enjoy collecting things and I don't. So, it is what it is. I have a very different eating kind of schedule, right? I'm not really a person who likes to eat a whole lot of food, right? I just like to prepare something small and get on with my day. So this is just a few examples of things that I know ahead of time are going to become problematic. Or let's suppose I end up married to a man who has a big family. I don't have a big family. Most of the people around me have either passed away, or I just don't communicate with them. Like they're just, I come from a very small family, but I know that's not the case for other people. So let's say his family comes over a lot, and maybe I'm not in the mood to host them. Like I'm just not in the mood, or I'm not feeling well. Again, if we have our own places, then he can do whatever he wants to do. He can say, oh, I'm having my family over, would you like to join us? At that point I can determine yes or no depending on what's happening, and that's it, right? Or what if he wants to spend time with his friends, have a couple of guys over or whatever? Well, again, maybe I don't want to be in their company. So I think that's why it would be, in those types of situations for me, it would be better to keep it separate. And I started to learn more about like couples who actually did this. And sometimes, and again, it all comes down to the couple, right? Like, because you can live under a roof and be happy with someone around you 24/7. Or there's other people who live apart and they're very happy as well. So there is no one good way to live your life. And that's what I'm trying to say. We have to try to break out of this mold where like society kind of dictates to you, well, this is the way it has to be because everyone else is doing it and it's the norm. Well, we're all very individual, right? So like, I know in my heart right now where I'm at, living with a man doesn't appeal to me at all, right? What does appeal to me is having someone who I can still spend time with and be committed to. I'm not worried about cheating. If someone wants to cheat, they're going to cheat even if you share the same house with them. It happens every day. So if you want to cheat, free to do so. Go right ahead. The door's open. Like I don't have the time to monitor your phone, and like it's not something that I want to sign up. I'm not going to sign up for something like that, because if I have trust issues, then first of all, why am I then even with you? So because people have those questions, and yes, it is more pricey to maintain two households. You got double the expenses in a way, but at the same time, for me, the money is not so much the issue if it's going to bring me peace at the end of the day and preserve the marriage, as opposed to having to do things the other way by us like living together. And again, I've never done this arrangement in my life with anyone, so I'm not speaking from any particular experience, but I do know from listening to some of the testimonies that people have to share, it's actually saved their marriage. Because the truth is that no matter how much you love someone, having them consistently in your face, well, there's an opportunity for more problems, like I mentioned with the domestic chores. I don't know how this would work with small children. I mean, I've heard that some couples make it work. I'm not sure about that, but I'm not in that boat. So as a middle-aged woman who already has a teenage daughter, I think I'm in a better position to be happier with this type of arrangement. And I do find that this tends to work for people who are older. They've kind of been through the whole thing of living together and they just realize it's not for them. And that's okay. You do not have to be stuck with each other, like to say that you're happily married. And that's the conditioning that we have been undergoing all this time. It's like you have to do everything by a certain, like by the book, right? Like get married, buy the house, have the kids, and so on, right? Why can't we break away from that given our own individual needs? And I know that what I'm sharing may rub people the wrong way. They're going to be like, well, why even want to get married if you're just going to treat it like just a dating situation or a friends with benefits type of thing. And in my scenario, the way I envision it to be is we would live in relatively close proximity. Like some people are okay with even their spouse living in another state or country. That's not going to work for me. I know that because I want you to be accessible to me, and I'm sure you would want me to be accessible to you should something happen or we need each other. So, like, down the street from me is great, or a half-hour drive is okay, right? Like, we just need to be able to get to each other in a relatively quick time if we wanted to. So, me getting on a plane 6 hours away is not going to work. I'll tell you that right now. But even if we should live in the same building, right? Or houses next to each other, something like that, that'd be great in my mind. Again, I haven't put this into practice, but I'm just saying that, like, this idea is kind of exciting to me because it opens up a whole new realm of like possibilities. And knowing myself has really contributed to understanding better like how I want to live my life. I know for a fact that I'm not a clingy person. So I don't need someone to be around me to validate me, to do pretty much anything. Yes, I do enjoy the company of someone else, and if they can offer some type of assistance, in some ways, why not? And being committed at the same time, right? I'm not seeing anyone else, you're not seeing anyone else, we're married, but we also have kind of our own thing going on as well, meaning like I want to sleep in my bed and not be interrupted by someone snoring or any other type of issues they may have. That's why I've even heard of some couples, they live under the same roof, but they have separate bedrooms. So they don't have to have those issues because some people have sleep apnea or they have, I don't know, they just take over the whole bed somehow, right? So, and sleep is very important. So how are you going to get rested when the person you're next to is, and they're not doing it on purpose, but I'm just saying that's how different we can be. And I don't want to be, impeding anyone's rest, and I don't want anyone to do that to me either. And it just seems like for where I am right now and the things that I've been through, because again, I did the whole cohabitation thing. I've done it. And as nice as it was at some points, it doesn't exactly sit well with me either. Like even before I came across this living apart together concept not too long ago, I was really struggling internally with like, how will I ever share a roof with a man one day, like long term? We're talking marriage. Because this opened my eyes to kind of how I want to live because of a situation that I'm in, right? And someone may be thinking, well, if you meet the right person, then you won't feel that way. I highly doubt it because, like I said, we're all different. We have our own quirks. And nobody is going to have the same perspective on something as you. And yes, you can still compromise even if you don't live in the same house. You still have to communicate and do everything that you have to do to maintain that relationship. But I think living together is a little overrated. I'll be honest. I don't think, maybe in some situations it's helpful, but not in all. And that's why I wanted to shed light on a new perspective because it is different, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong, right? Again, I have to reiterate, in a committed relationship, marriage, because I still want to honor God with my life. So I'm definitely not going to be fornicating and living apart. It'll be marriage, but we're going to maintain our own dwellings, right? I don't want to argue with someone about the decor of the house or what room, like what color they want to paint the room or anything like that. Those are things I just don't want to argue with someone about. And I don't want things to consistently keep coming up, right? I know when I was listening to this particular couple, if you go online, you'll find them. One of the girls, the wife, she actually recorded something on TikTok. I don't remember her name, but anyway, she was saying how her and her husband were married. I think they lived together for 7 years under the same roof. And it got to the point where both of them started to feel very like they were losing themselves. And they decided to take a break, like find their own, like get their own places to live. And it actually saved their marriage. Now, that's not going to be the case for everyone because some people, whether they live together or apart, they just can't stand each other. And it's going to ultimately end in divorce or a breakup. But there are those unique situations where people truly love each other, but they just can't be in the same house because whatever's going on internally with them, and that's perfectly fine. If you can be separated and still be together and love each other and, be committed, then why not? Who am I to say that you're doing it wrong, right? So I think for me, this was more of like just an introductory type of lesson to this idea, because I know when you hear it like for the first time, it's kind of like you don't know what to think about it in a way. And if you do, you might be jumping to the wrong conclusions too quickly without actually hearing this out. And, yeah, it's not going to work for everyone, just like living under the same roof is not going to work for everyone either. I know, and I feel pretty confident right now that that's not going to be the best arrangement for me at this stage. And it's not to say that like even if I were to be married and we lived apart, maybe down the road we would end up being together under the same roof, depending on the situation, right? That can happen. But right now, today, as I say this, no, the thought of sharing a home with someone does not appeal to me in the least bit, because of just where I'm at, right? The more you grow and evolve, the more you realize that it's okay not to follow, the ways of the world. Just because every couple you come across cohabitates doesn't mean that they're necessarily happy either, right? And that's the thing. We have to kind of open our minds, right? And as I mentioned very early on in my message, if you had told me this 20 years ago, given my limited life experience, and actually I did see couples like through like my friend's parents, and kind of some of the arrangements they had, and I was like, how can you be away from someone for so long that you love? And now I realize that it's okay and it's normal to want to kind of have your own life too, meanwhile being with someone else. Again, I'm highlighting committed, monogamous, right? Because there's people who do polyamory, and I'm not advocating for that at all, right? So everyone adds their own spin to things. I'm just saying strictly married, but yes, we can sleep over at each other's places. We can share each other's, ups and downs, like the highs and lows of life, not a problem. We can love on each other. We can spend time with, with our families, like to get all together and whatnot. But, if I'm not in the mood to want to like host your family because of whatever I'm going through, then why do I have to force myself to do that, right? I'm going to become a very angry person over time if I end up chipping away at who I am just to always appease someone else. And yes, I understand compromise. We can compromise on lots of other things. We don't have to just compromise on domestic chores, right? We can remove that from the equation, and then we can compromise on, what do you want to do tonight? Or the other things that come up, like, any emotional things or whatever, right? But I'm just saying that, like, I think for me, just thinking out loud here, I think removing the whole living together thing would greatly diminish a lot of the issues. I've even heard from like the couples that I was watching, they were saying how like they don't take each other for granted anymore. They make more effort to spend time together, and when they do, they're fully like, the time there is fully like it's me and you, right? Because when you live with someone, you got the stresses of the day-to-day life, right? And it's very easy to take someone for granted, right? Because of everything that's going on. A lot of times you can be under one roof and just not want to even like talk to that person, right? It happens regularly. So what is the benefit of that? So just throwing it out there for people, if you want to look into it for yourself, right? I'm not saying that this is the perfect way to go, because there is no perfect. It's dependent on each couple what they want to do, right? I'm just sharing another perspective and giving people something to think about. So until next time, God bless and amen.